Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at how to write a report for level 1 or level 2 functional skills English. Now this is a really important thing to go over because it does come up quite often in the writing assessment and a lot of people really struggle on how to approach this. If you want to have access to our other masterclass lessons as well, then please do consider joining our membership. It will give you access to all of those lessons as well as the free support and feedback during your course. By the end of this video you'll be able to recall the key skills needed for the writing assessment, understand how to approach report writing, and finally, apply your understanding to respond to an exam style question. Look at the exam question below and attempt the challenges that follow. The local council have asked you to write a report about the local park in your area. Unfortunately, the park in question is of desperate need of restoration. The park has issues with litter, vandalism, and broken equipment, as well as a number of other problems. In your response, you should write in the form of a report, use appropriate organisational or presentational features, have accurate spelling, grammar and punctuation, show an awareness of language techniques. So whenever you get a question like this, the first thing we think about is can you break down the question and can you identify the TAP? Now if you're not too sure what we mean by the TAP, we mean the topic, the audience and the purpose. And this is going to help you to break down what is quite a big writing question and actually understand what the focus of your writing needs to be. For the super challenge, I want you to think what kind of a tone would you need to use in this response. If you're not sure what we mean by tone, we mean essentially the mood that you're creating while you're writing. In the mega challenge, how would you lay out a report and how might this differ from the other forms of writing that we've looked at so far? Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So for our first one, our challenge, we're thinking about what is the TAP. So the topic is the local park in your area. The audience is going to be members of the council, and the purpose is to report on any issues or concerns that you may have. Now there is an element with a question like this where you do need to be a little bit more creative, so you do need to think a little bit outside the box and think about the kind of things that you'd include in this writing. For the super challenge then, for report writing you'll need to use a formal tone, and for the mega challenge, the layout features for a report may include title, paragraphs and bullet points. And again, if you haven't thought so already, think about all the different forms of writing that would come up in the exam. Any typical exam that you get in the proper assessment will actually have two different writing assessments within it. So it's important to think about not only will you have to do a report, but there'll be also another form of writing as well. Often people really struggle with the report, so let's think about how it can compare with the other forms of writing that you've had before. Boost your vocabulary. Now what we're going to do is look at a list of low-level adjectives, and what I'd like to do is to try and come up with more ambitious words to suit the tone of the exam question. So as we just said then, these words are fairly low level, so we've got bad, messy, dodgy, dirty and damaged. So another thing to think about when you look at those selection of words, which of one of these straight away seems like it might be inappropriate. Now when we actually looked at the TAP of the exam question, we're able to understand that this is supposed to be a formal piece of writing, so which of these words doesn't really belong in formal writing? Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So on the left hand side then we have our simple word choice, and on the right hand side we have the synonyms which would make it a more effective word for our writing. Now if you're not too sure what we mean by a synonym, this is a word or phrase that means the same or has a similar meaning. Now bad is a little bit of a vague term, it doesn't specify what could be bad. However, derelict, this is a much more intelligent form of the word, and it also kind of gives us a bit more information. So bad and derelict are very similar, but derelict actually means something that is run down and something that's been neglected, which would work really well if we're talking about a local park. Instead of messy, we're going to say filthy. Instead of dodgy, we're going to say menacing. So dodgy is a bit of a strange term. The reason why we're not going to use that is because this is classed as what we call colloquial language. Now this is far too casual to be using in a report, so you want to make sure that you're using a very informal voice in your writing. Next we have dirty. It's not the best word in the world, so instead we're going to use the word sullied, and then instead of damaged we're going to say vandalized, and that's a really good word to use because it actually is a little bit of a reference back to the question that we were looking at a moment ago. Difficulty rating. So we've spoken a little bit before about report writing. We've also said how does it compare to some of the other forms of writing that come up in your exam. So unfortunately reports tend to be quite a difficult one. So I'd categorise this as a mid to high difficulty rating. So a report is often one of the hardest texts to produce for learners because it is often a far cry away from anything most of us would produce in real life. In addition, a report has very little similarities to the other texts you may have been asked to produce. So it's really important that you go over report writing, and if you are struggling with it still a little bit after this video, do check out our other videos that go into it in quite a lot of depth as well. Now what we're going to do is have a look at an example. Once we've read through that example, I'd like you to try and have a go at a few challenges, a few questions, just to test our understanding on report writing in general. So here's our student example then. So it says, I'm writing this report on behalf of the local council to detail my findings on the conditions of the park in Heath Hayes. This report will cover some of the issues found with the current condition of the park and outline ways that they may be addressed. So you can see there that within the report it sounds a little bit different to the different forms of writing you may be asked to produce, though we clearly had a little bit of an introduction to say what it is that we're writing about and what we hope to actually come from our writing, what we hope to achieve by the end of this example. Firstly, the biggest issue that needs to be addressed is the level of litter and debris found around the park. The area is messy and much of the equipment, intended to be used by children, is covered in dirt. Many of the children that try to use the park are at risk of getting hurt or injured, as even the swings are a bit dodgy. Secondly, the local community has concerns with the level of antisocial behaviour. There has been a big rise of graffiti and vandalism caused by local teenagers. The council has reported a 20% rise in complaints from the local community in the last 12 months. So before we move on then and start thinking about the questions, I will remind you that this is a student example. It is by no means perfect, and we're going to think about the ways that this may be improved in the next part of the video as well. So this is what I'd like to do then. I'd like to use what you've just read to attempt the challenges below. So the first one we're going to think about is, can you identify where the writer has used low-level adjectives and replace those words with more appropriate adjectives to suit the tone of the writing? For the super challenge, can you identify any language techniques that were used by the writer? And finally, for our mega challenge, can you try and use this response as a starting point for your own writing? Now it's really important that you keep on practicing these writing assessments because it is often the hardest part for learners to get through. If you haven't got a teacher to actually give you feedback or give you any marks for it, then please do consider joining our membership, in which case we'll be able to actually mark your work and give you feedback to help you improve. Now once you've actually wrote your response, a good thing to do would be to use the following success criteria. So if we go through the individual bullet points then, this is what we need to do to make sure that our report has been written to a high standard. So first of all then, we must make sure that we're writing in a clear, coherent manner. That just means that basically, are we making sense? Can people understand what you've wrote? Next, we have write in the form of a report. So have you used the typical organisational features and have you used formal writing? Have you got accurate spelling, punctuation and grammar? Have you used a range of effective adjectives? And have you used a range of language techniques? So what's important to note with this success criteria as well, that this covers a whole lot of different things within your writing. So it's not just report writing as well. Many of these elements are things that you need to think about in terms of actually doing things like a leaflet, an article, a speech. Many of them will need a lot of these skills as well. In terms of our next lesson, we're going to be going over the following things. So we're going to recall the key skills needed for the writing assessment. We're going to understand the key features of a blog. And we're going to apply our understanding to attempt the next question in the assessment paper. As I've said before, with any functional skills exam, it's really important that you manage your time effectively and realise that within the time that you're given in the exam, you are actually expected to complete 2 separate exam questions. So it's really important that when you are actually having to go at these tasks, that you time yourself and you manage your time appropriately, so you're not spending too much time on the one task, and making sure that you spend an equal amount of time on both questions. If you need any additional support or help, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can always join our membership, and that's going to unlock a lot of different benefits to you to make sure you can actually go through your course and feel confident that you're going to get a pass at the end of it. Alternatively, you can always leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel for some really fantastic videos on English and functional skills English. It's called Bookworm Teaching, and there's a lot of lessons on there for everything around English and more guidance as well. Thank you very much, guys, if you've stayed to the end of the video. If you need any help or anything like that, please do get in touch. Bye bye.